So for those, if you haven't met, this is Chrissy. You've probably all talked to her on the phone. She is your portfolio builder. You know, and so, yes, yay, Chrissy. So she'll be in and out. We'll be doing a lot of talking about things together. She goes out and looks at all the properties. You're going to get some sheets later that show you the values, the tax assessed values, the estimate of repairs on the properties, pictures. She does all that, all of it. And so, you know, if you find anything wrong with it, she does it all.
It's my fault.
All right, thanks. So,
Chrissy Scapegoat.
yes, that's her last name. That's actually her last name. So, a lot of people actually think buying real estate subject to is illegal, or that when who does not know what a due on sale clause is? Raise your hand. And by the way, this is 2 days of dialogue. This isn't really a seminar. So raise your hand if you don't know what a due on sale clause is. Okay, in your mortgage, there's a due on sale clause. Meaning if you transfer the rights to your property to someone else, the bank can call your entire loan due. Came about because of the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, when interest rates were 15, 18, 20%. Prior to then, I could come to you and buy your house and assume your loan. And the debt just became mine. Didn't have to do much of anything. Sign a couple papers, but it was nothing really, you know, there was no bank process. You didn't have to be approved. You could have had no job and no money and on the verge of bankruptcy. Well, the real thing happened was, you know, people were doing that and the banks were going, wait a minute, interest rates are 15% now, and people are assuming our old loans at 5%. We want to make them refinance. So, due on sale clause. So, right now, if a property transfers and someone else gets rights to it and keeps paying the mortgage, you think the banks are going to care? You think they're going to call a loan due, especially in these economic times? As long as somebody's sending in a check, I don't even think they'll call the loans due if interest rates went up to 15% next week. Not in the situation they're in. You know, I mean, it's just, although, because I think it would look, for one thing, they've got so much debt on their books now. That's one thing. The other thing is that I used to think, well, they would seem callous with what's going on in America, but then again, Northern Trust doesn't seem to care. I mean, you see their response to that whole thing. It was basically like, for those that don't know, they're the bank that had the party and the golf tournament and all that. And so, you know, the government says, you know, you can't do that. You should pay that money back. And they basically told them, we're paying interest on it. We're going to pay the money back. We're going to use it however we want. You know, there's some people that are really in tune to the American people and you know, the people around the country, probably their you know, their own clients that have lost their butt in investments and savings accounts. And so that's a due on sale clause. Now, all it is contract law. Any lawyers in here? Okay, we don't have to ask you to leave then. It's just contract law. A lot of people think you'll hear this in the course of doing real estate, that it's illegal. You know, there's no due on sale jail. You know, all it is it's not it's not a federal law, it's not a civil violation. It's just a violation of the contract, which means the bank has the right to call the loan due if they want. I literally have never actually heard of an example where it's been done. And everybody that does this says the same thing, you know, meaning speaking in seminars that I know, and every real estate investor I've ever known, I've never heard of it being done. So that's kind of one of the things I mean, we get that all the time after the seminars and the feedback. Later on, you know, it'll be like a month later, somebody say, I want a refund from the seminar you did last month because I found out that you can't buy properties no money down because subject to is illegal. It violates the due on sale clause. It's just pieces of advice that people get. And by the way, when you leave here, you're going to have all our contact information. When you get pieces of advice like that, before acting on them, I'd suggest you write them up, email them in, or fax them in. Chrissy and I are happy to answer things like that. I answer them all the time. I got a guy, just talked to him for an hour yesterday on the phone. He thinks short sales are illegal in California. And I'm sure any California people here are seeing signs and all kinds of short sales going on. So it's just crazy what people act on, and seemingly intelligent people. I mean, I'm the same way. I'm reading a lot on the anti-aging stuff now. And obviously there's a mass of information out there. And I'll bring stuff up to my wife all the time, but she just rolls her eyes, which is good. It's a good indicator for me to come back and go, all right, well, let me think about this intelligently. I can't rub that on my belly and lose 30 pounds. But it feels so good, though. And I found other uses for it, so. What? What are you guys thinking about? Don't ask, don't tell. So this particular event is people that percolate to the top that that fall into a category that have a couple of things: a FICO, money, the wherewithal to actually go get partners that have one of those, don't have any time but want to invest in real estate. You know, that's the category here. Now, the event that I just told you about, there's usually 200 people there. We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, we got 16, 15 people here, and about 5 or 6 that couldn't make it at the last minute. So that's why when I started, I say I applaud you, because you fall into that category. Some of you are still struggling with the FICO and the money situation. You know, those of you that are self-employed, you understand how difficult that is sometimes. You've got the money, you got the credit, but you're self-employed. And, you know, I mean, one important decision I made a few years ago was to really start W-2ing, my wife and I, in our corporation. So we could throw down the tax returns, I could throw down the W-2s and show, you know, enough salary and stuff like that. So if you're not doing that, you might want to think about it rather than just taking money out of your business and spending it. So what you're really here to do is to buy property, right? You're here to find out how I'm going to provide that to you, how we're going to manage it, how we're going to mitigate your risk, which we can't get rid of your risk because it's real estate. So the beauty of it is it's probably the lowest risk investment that you can actually get rich on. There's obviously lower risk investments, but you ain't getting rich on those unless you buy a whole, you know, couple $1 million worth of CDs and stuff like that at a time, which is good to do down the road. But you got to get that couple $1 million to put in those CDs. I mean, I like having that safe stuff and annuities and stuff like that that can help you completely sleep at night. But real estate's not far from that. That's why interest rates on real estate are so low. I mean, the bank will loan you money at what right now? I mean, for fixed, what's fixed at? 5.5, somewhere around there? 5, down to 5? You know, and the reason is they feel it's safe. We used to think the banks were smart, and so they knew what they were talking about. We know that's not true anymore, but I still do believe that the real estate, you know, is safe. And so that's the beauty of it. So you're going to learn in these 2 days. I'm going to have agent, property management, rehab. We're going to have a talk on lending tomorrow from investment side and from the private lenders side. I still use private lending. I just got 2 gentlemen to pledge $1.5 million. And put in an LLC just for me, just to send a fax over saying I need $120,000. It goes here, needs to be wired here by Thursday for a closing on Friday. It's a wonderful feeling. It's a huge negotiation technique that we can put into play for you guys. Now, I don't need $1.5 million, but I don't turn down private funds, but I also build funds because it helps us with you guys. Because if I use all my own funds, then, you know, for instance, buying HUD properties, REO properties, if I find a whole batch with one bank and I'm using the same proof of funds and they go, wait a minute, you just bought 10 houses, you pledged 500 grand, and you just put a bid in for 10 more because I'm getting houses for you guys, you know, I can't do that. But it's just as easy for you guys to get that same thing. So we're going to have a talk tomorrow about private lending because that, and again, some of you that have been in my 4-day, you know that in my 4-day, I talk about how to do this business for free, and it's a lot more work, and then how to spend money and do things faster. And in that case, for instance, you can drive around and look for vacant houses, for instance, and go to the tax records and try to get in touch with the owner. Or if you have a little extra money, you buy mailing lists and you mail letters and postcards. So there's different levels you can do. And so it's the same thing in here with just with acquiring properties. You can be ready to say, email Chrissy or fax Chrissy or call her and say, hey, I'd like to add another house. And, you could use my hard money lending at 5 points, 15%, which again is cheap money for this because you've got it short term. 15% is not 15% a month, it's 15% a year. And so it's only a little over 1% a month, which usually you have the money less than a month. So the only fee there is the 5 points. And that's where hard money lenders and bridge loans, that's where they make their money anyway. They have 15%, but that's not where they make their money. They want you to get in and out, and so they can loan again. You might get some private lending at home, and you might come back to me and say, Jim, I'd like 6 houses. I'd like 10. I've got a partner. I've got some partners, and they've pledged money. And whereas I might not be able to say, well, yeah, I can't cover you on 10 this week because we've got 12 other students that are closing this week. Or I might just say, that's a little risky on my part anyway to put 10 houses in one person at a time. You might come and say, I got the money. And then I might say, well, let's maybe spread those out over a month, but you might say, no, let's just do it. Find me 10. Because you got a private lender of your own. So I try not to get you completely reliant on us. However, some of you are never going to have to do anything. For the next 5 years, 10 years, you'll just be buying a house a quarter, 2 houses a quarter, and Chris will be finding them for you, adding to your portfolio. It'd be just as if you were doing all the work yourself, except you don't have to do all the work yourself. Okay, you'll be adding real estate. And I'll show you some of the effects that we're going to have on that. So the 2 days is really to get you comfortable with kind of my machine here, and the machine's always changing. And I've only got some of the parts here. Got some of the agents that find properties for us. Chrissy finds a lot. We've got, I think, just one of the rehabbers is coming. We've got 2. Each of them manage different crews, different companies. I like to have backups and multiples in everything I do. Got multiple hard money lenders, multiple agents, multiple property managers, multiple rehabbers, and everything. And in addition, I've just put a letter of intent in to buy a RE/MAX franchise. And we'll be closing on that in a couple of weeks, which opens up another network for us and opens up properties everywhere for us to find very easily. So, purely bought that for, I bought it 90% to supply this operation. And then 10% they have some tools that are advantageous to us. Now, I wouldn't have bought the whole company just for access to the MLS, but there's other types of tools, and their network's one of them. They actually have franchisees all over the world. It's not just a U.S. company. And there's people all over the world wanting to loan money here and wanting to buy properties. So I'm going out to that entire network all over the world to find private lenders for us. I'm talking to a gentleman now in the UK that has got $40 million he wants to pledge. So we're trying to get that down. If we get that down, that should cover a couple of houses for us. So what's it worth in the dollars? Probably 100,000. No, I know.
That's like 2 to 1, isn't it?
I don't know what it is today. But so these 2 days are all about getting you comfortable with what we internally call my investor network. And so I do believe I do have a unique perspective here that many of you know, and some of you, it probably helped you make this decision. And I have taught tons of people to buy houses. And so these are all things that we value in our business. If we were to find any low-income housing in not quite war zones, because we won't go into a war. A war zone is, the drug-infested, crime-infested, prostitutes on the, walking the streets. We don't go there. There's plenty of money to be made, and there are businesses and people that really can't afford to live anywhere else. And I do know some very good people that buy houses and put people in those areas with government Section 8 housing and stuff like that. I just don't go there. If I can't take my kids there comfortably, I'm just not going to invest there. I'm not going to put you guys there. So we start just above there and all the way up. Okay. comfortable, working class homes and up. And this is the way we approach our company. I could approach it just from the profit standpoint, and believe me, I am a stickler for profit. Anybody here that's got a business understands that. I mean, actually, not everybody that has businesses actually does understand that. They just got themselves out of a job, and now they got they do the same thing, but they work twice as much. But yeah, I'm definitely a stickler for profit. I'm a stickler for you guys getting a good deal, because if you get a good property, what are you going to do? You're going to come back and get another one. You know, if I stick it to you, that's going to be it. You know, and so that's no good. But our company, this is the way we view things here. You know, I don't go in and try to, you know, steal a house from someone that's in foreclosure. In fact, Maurice knows this. I've told this story. It's the last time because we haven't been doing a lot of short sales recently. But the woman down south, like South Holland or somewhere, that we talked to her on the phone for like an hour, she had like 20% equity in her house, and she was going to lose it. And I told her just go to her bank and refinance. And she just is so locked up in the stress of the situation that she was going to lose her house. And we could have bought it, and we could have profited from it, but we didn't. So, but these properties, you know, all the properties you're buying, some of you are going to choose to flip. By the end of tomorrow, I'm going to try to talk as many of you out of that as possible, because only once you sell them, you absolutely have to. You want to never sell. I'm going to show you a plan that, for those of you that might have young kids, on how to use this to send them to college for free. That's what I'm doing, my wife and I. So, helping families save to buy homes. We're going to be putting people in comfortable, working class homes, you know, with decent rent. You'll have an opportunity to rent to own these homes instead of just rent. We'll try to do both. Chris will often consult with you beforehand, saying, do you just want to get somebody in this right away? And we'll put a rental sign in a front yard and a rent to own. And you might make a decision, and we'll always talk with you and advise you and talk about your financial situation and your goals. And I'll say, well, this is what I would do. And that way, if somebody comes and wants to rent it first, you might just want it rented. You might also be okay financially and say, you know what, let's try to rent to own it so I can withstand a mortgage for a couple of months. I'd rather get somebody into rent. You might get someone in that rent to owns one of your houses, and we'll rent to own it and end up just renting to own it for the next 15 years. Okay? You'll also get rentals in that will never go away either. The one advantage of the rent to own is they take care of the property, because they treat it much more like an owner. Less than 10% ever actually buy the properties. That's the statistics that I've read. How accurate they are, I really don't know, but it's a common statistic that I see with people that talk about lease options and rent to own. So, but these are all the things that Chrissy, you know, and I talk about. This is the things we talk about with tenants. You know, these are the things that, you know, we'll when we do our selling houses in 2 days, you know, thing, we go to local businesses with flyers so that they, you know, hand them out to all the people that work for them, because we got a house near there, because they know how important it is to live near where you work and not have to drive. Worked a lot better when gas was $5 a gallon, but. So, and obviously relieving sellers of burden. All these properties, whether it is HUD, of course, the more HUD homes we buy, the more burden we're relieving from each other. You know, since our government owns virtually everything, including all industry now, or will soon. It's crazy out there. So, I just want to convey to you guys that this is the way we look at our business. I'm beyond where many of you are. Many of you will remain as, you know what, I just want a portfolio built. I just want extra wealth built. I want it built for retirement. I want it built for cash flow. I want it built for whatever. Okay? And that's good, and that's fine. And that's great, because that's what I think's the beauty of real estate. I mean, it took me a long time to get this program together, because I knew how valuable it would be for certain people. You know, it's just but for us, it's more of a business, and It's a business I want to be proud of. And it's a business that I want to grow. And so this is the type of business that you're involved with. This is the things that we think of when we buy houses. Now, many ordinary people are millionaires by just systematically buying houses. And I'm going to go through some examples that'll show you that. Some of you have more time than others. Lupe, him and I were discussing that the buying one house a year thing. I think it was us, wasn't it, on the phone? He's like, you know, saying, yeah, I'm going to go over this plan of buying one house a year for 10 years. He's like, Jim, we don't have that much time. He met him and I. But you can buy two. Yeah, he's crazy. And but for instance, my son's 10. He's got 8 years till college, and he owns 3 houses. And in his IRA, and we'll talk about how to do that. And when he's 18, he'll probably own around 10 or 12 houses, and that'll pay for his college. And it doesn't take that much time, and it does create financial independence. You know, everybody thinks that, you know, when we go through retirement scenarios, it's like, well, how much do you think you're going to need to retire? I'm going to need like $25,000 a month. I'm like, all right, Sylvester Stallone. I mean, you know, what are you going to be doing for $25,000 a month? I mean, I lead a pretty, I mean, I don't live a movie star's lifestyle, but I live a high-end lifestyle now, and geez, I'm not even anywhere near that. And, you know, when the house is paid off and the cars are paid off and the colleges are, actually, I don't have to pay off the colleges. I mean, I could see spending $10,000 a month if I was traveling a lot, but I still try to think, I'm like, I don't even if I was just spending like a drunken sailor, you know. And, you know, so that's why it doesn't take that much. It just takes concentration, and it takes focus. And that's where Christy and I get to help some of you with concentrating and focusing for you while you're concentrating on focusing on other things. Investing in houses don't need a lot of education. By the end of today and tomorrow, I think some of you, the light switch will go on. Some of you it's on, but maybe it's a little dim. Some of you not sure at all. But you'll see when I start putting numbers to things for the first time, it's just not complicated. We just closed on a property Friday morning, was it? I don't know, 20 minutes it took, which, you know, none of you have ever experienced that unless you've bought an investment property. If you've only bought your own property, you know that's impossible because it takes more than 20 minutes just to sign the 6,000 documents. You know, but you know, we went there because we had a new set of lawyers, and we wanted to see how they operated. Like I won't go to. I've got one more closing with him, and then I won't go to any more. He'll just go there himself. But there's like 5 pieces of paper. There's not all the disclosures that most of them are disclosures from the bank that's loaning you the money. You know, you probably you know, your firstborn clause. Have you guys noticed that in your mortgage that, you know, in case you default, they take your child and put them in slave labor for 10 years? It's right after the due on sale clause. Promise? You know, some of my students have taken over a year to get their first property. And then when they have, that's it. It's all over. I mean, that's it. And as long as you buy your first house, you can buy a second. That's the important thing about the first house. You can't build a string of houses without buying that first one. And if none of you ever buy another property with our assistance, but you go on to buy it, then we'll be happy for you. Because, again, those that have come to the 4 days, I always talk to everybody, if I can get you to do your first transaction, that's it. I just want you to do your first transaction. At least then you can make an intelligent decision and go, you know what? I'd rather focus my time on futures or, you know, some other investment strategy, which is fine because you can make money in all kinds of things. You know, but I'd like people to at least get a property, even if you flip it, you keep and hold it, or whatever, and then decide and see the effects. And of course, hopefully the first one's not a negative cash flow and it falls over and burns down. And you know, however, if you continue in this business, all those things will happen. A property won't approach You'll find you got foundation problems, roof problems, but that's the beauty of getting a portfolio going, because then the risk and the losses are mitigated and they're spread across properties. All right, houses are not complicated. We can get very complicated, and we are getting complicated in our business. We are doing a number of commercial things, and some of you privately have expressed interest to get in on some commercial deals too, and we'll get there with you, but we want to get this going first. I want to get you some houses, because it's probably good for you to do both. But again, houses are uncomplicated. You know, you can buy a piece of commercial property that, you know, one piece could out cash flow like 10 houses. I've got a friend, he's got one piece of commercial property, out cash flows 42 of his houses. Okay. Now some of you are like, wow, 42 houses. I know a guy who owns 125 houses, and all watched through a property management company. He just gets a check at the end of the month, and that's it. And it's a pretty hefty check, actually. Rents have a long history of increasing, which is good, because when rents increase, what happens to your mortgage payment? Nothing. It stays the same. And prices have increased at 5% a year. It doesn't matter what's going on right now. I mean, every 10-year period, basically, the appreciation averages 5% a year. So, rule of 72. Anybody remember the rule of 72? How soon is our double at 5% interest? You divide 72 by 5%, 14.4 years. That's at just the average. Well, you know, Chicago, LA, even places like Phoenix that's been decimated, and Las Vegas and places in Florida, you know, even though they've been decimated over a 10-year period, you know, they're going to go up. And you know, it's you know, a place like Detroit that is going to be under 5% over that period. And a place like Chicago is probably going to be above 5%. And even some of those places I just named will probably end up above 5% when it's all said and done. And when we come out of this, appreciation might go to 8%. It might creep up 4%, then 8%, then 9%, then 7%. And so a lot of the areas, and Chicago has always been one of them, because Chicago's always went this way. I mean, it couldn't withstand what happened, and it did go down 14% in, I think, the last year, and more the year before, and not all pockets of it. And so what you get is 5%. Okay? And again, in Chicago, we'll probably get higher than that. And there's ways to increase that, which is what we'll talk about. Because that 5%, by the way, that 5% is based on your retail value, the appreciation of what the value really is. So if we buy it for less than that, you're getting a better return on your money. And when they're not going up in price, that's when we're going to make our best purchases, okay, which is what we're doing now, which is great. So, you ever hear you make your money when you buy, not when you sell, or you make your money when you buy, you get paid when you sell. Well, the reason you make your money when you buy, at least the way I've always looked at it, is it had two different definitions. You got to buy. First of all, you have to buy to make money. You know, that's never really. People in real estate, in books and stuff, when you read this, it's usually, you know, they always say you got to buy right. You don't make it when you sell. If you buy right and get all your profit up front, you might even sell at a break even because you made all your money up front. Well, I look at it as really two things. One is you just can't make any money unless you buy right. I mean, you just can't. And you can buy poorly and still make money. You don't have to. Everything doesn't have to be a deep discount. Okay. Sometimes deep discounts are just because you want to flip a property to another investor, and you got to leave some stuff, got to leave some meat on the bone for the other investor. But you also can make money when you actually purchase. Right now, does it sound okay? All right, well, you make money when you actually make the purchase. So, got a house for $200,000, refinance 80%. And again, if you don't need cash flow, we'll go through examples. I'm kind of just still doing an introduction here. We'll go through examples, but $200,000 house, you refinance it generally at 80%. That's $160,000. So we look at the mortgage, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance at 80%, and will the rents cover that? And if it will, you go ahead and mortgage it all the way up to 80%. And maybe 78% would have been the break even, so you got 2%, you might end up with a couple $1,000 in your pocket. But if you don't need that, if you want more cash flow, then you just refinance it lower, and then the rents get higher and higher, the mortgage payment gets lower and lower. So you actually can get paid, actually literally paid when you buy, okay? But the fact is you can't get anything unless you buy. Okay, so why houses? And this is apartments and commercial properties. There's a higher turnover. When we fix up a house where it's comfortable, where any one of us would live in there, it might be a lower end neighborhood than you prefer to live in because you've worked and you've moved up the ladder, but if you could put yourself back in time, you'd look at the house and say, yeah, I would live there. Those houses, compared to a strip mall, even if you paid attention on the way here, there's strip malls, there's just commercial properties that have been vacant forever. And there's some real strong reasons why they're vacant, so we'll talk about it, but then there's a lot higher turnover. You can get a house where someone's there for 15 years. Accountants and lawyers with commercial property. A lot of times we're not dealing with very many accountants and lawyers, and so that makes it a lot easier for houses. If you get good tenants, they pay rent and they take care of the property, especially when you rent to own. And they're not great negotiators, tenants, compared to a commercial property. Oftentimes you are dealing with much better negotiators, and it's harder to get good deals. They also need you more than you need them. And there's a difference. There's some very fundamental differences between commercial property. Houses are a class of their own. I mean, the value of the house has nothing to do with the rent, for instance. The rents are whatever the market will pay. You don't determine the rents, by the way. I don't determine the rents. I'd love to determine the rents for you, but we don't. It's whatever will be paid. Sometimes a rent on a property just won't cover the cash flow. Anybody live in California? That's the big problem out there, right? They just can't. That's why you're here. And now those are coming closer together in California because and in some pockets the rents are covering, but that's been the major problem there. And a lot of companies have been well funded. They've calculated the appreciation and the negative cash flow, and they go along with that property. I'm more of the I don't know whether it was Peter Lynch or John Templeton or Warren Buffett, but one of them. What was the first rule of investing? It's don't lose money. So the value is not dependent on rent. It is in commercial property. You'll find that. Anybody here try to rent a commercial place ever? And you try to negotiating on the rent? It's very difficult. Because what happens if they lower the rent? They don't make as much money. It lowers the value of the property. Because it's based on the income. That's why you'll see commercial property vacant. I went to places and said, one strategy I've used is I've said, listen, I'll pay you cash. I'll pay you under the table. You don't have to report it to anybody. You can just report it as vacant. Because as soon as you find out what the rent is, it's a multiple of that, which is the value of the property. So if they rent it to you at a lower rent, they've just lowered the value of their property. And now they've got to wait until that lease is up, and then they've got to raise the rents to get the value of their property back. You don't have to do that. There's no relation in houses. There's just no relation. So some of you may or may not have known that, but that's empty house is the same value as a full house. The property's just not gonna change in value. Safer, less money, smaller down payments. Lenders will lend more on single-family residences. A lot more buyers for houses. Houses rent faster, fewer vacancies. All right. Here's there's another thing that we will we get houses from HUD, from banks, and from sellers. And those are our three sources of who owns the house. When we sell houses, There's going to be a number of ways, again, for you to be able to sell your house. Or put a tenant in it. You can rent it, lease it with an option to buy. You might be able to finance it yourself. You might do seller financing. Could be an option for you to put a 30-year mortgage on some place for 6%. Now that could be your CD. Would you rather control it yourself or let the bank control it? I mean, you're not going to get 6% in a CD right now anyway, you know. So these are all the things that Chris and I will be covering with you. So you've got options. And when you finance the property, you can get a better price. You know, if I can't get a loan from a bank, I know it's hard to believe that you'll be able to find anybody out there that can't get a loan from a bank, but and the house might appraise at $300,000. Would I be willing to pay $320 for it? Yeah, I would. To own my own house and move my family in. You feel anybody feel they're really taking advantage of somebody by just bumping it by $20,000? I mean, I don't feel you are. I think you're doing a great job because you're taking some risk. You're not really going to be profiting for down the road. Okay, so that's going to be an option for you too. There's really nothing off the table with us. You know, the house usually dictates it. The neighborhood, the type of the people that want to live there in that area. The financing every deal's, that's one of the things I like about this business. Every deal's different. I mean, sometimes they're not. I mean, if we get a couple of condos in same complex or something like that, it's kind of cookie cutter, but the people are different. The type of people you meet moving in have different life situations and different financing and different goals, and so, but you can actually make more money. And one of the things we will be doing is, as your portfolio grows, you'll be getting houses in different neighborhoods. Another thing that mitigates your risk, that's very much like, asset allocation or buying in different industries and for stocks. Different price ranges, different neighborhoods. You're going to learn how we look at houses. Lower priced houses, for instance, are better for income because the rents are higher in relation to the value of their income. But with a higher priced house, there might be less cash flow, but there's a higher potential for profit. And there's some reasons to do that too that have to do with capital gains that we'll talk about. So here, the cash flow and the safety of lower priced houses. Why is there more safety in lower priced houses? More people than can afford it. That's one reason. There's also, they're not really making any more of those, for the most part. Doesn't everybody need a bigger house? I mean, everybody wants a bigger house, so builders want to build bigger houses. So it is a style of house that, and that's why some of them are getting older and older, and then you'll see in neighborhoods, they start doing knockdowns or tear downs and building, and what usually goes up there? A bigger house. Okay, but this is the largest category of houses in this country. Okay, and then the tax advantages and potential of higher priced houses. Now, the reason there's tax advantages, the rent's less. Okay, do you know what costs you more, getting rental income or the profit from the house later on? The rental income, why? It's earned income versus capital gains. I can't promise you that ain't going to change, but I don't think it's going to change where it's equal or worse. So with a higher priced house and the rent goes down, your income goes down, right? So it's less taxes. And the value of the house goes up, and if you've got it over a year and you were to sell it, then that value comes in as capital gains, and you're taxed at the lowest rate. Okay? That's the difference between a low priced and that's the way I'm trying to take my mindset from me to you and how we look at these things. and these are discussions we'll have, and Chrissy and I'll at times be on a conference call with you, and I'll discuss maybe a higher priced house and see whether it fits in your goals, because we'll keep notes. We'll keep pretty good notes once we'll over time have some conversations and we'll get to know your goals. And you might say, I'm fine for cash flow for a while, and then those change, and you send us an email or a phone call, and then we keep notes on your file, and then we'll know what to do. We'll know which strategies. So we're matching your goals with these type of things. Okay, we're not just out finding a house and calling you up and trying to sell you a house. And here's some things too that people get misled. You got a house for $125,000, $150,000, $175,000, and we get this all the time. So somebody just says, houses in this neighborhood are declining. Well, we've got 4 houses here, and you divide them by 4. The average value is $237,000. So this neighborhood, last month had 4 houses sold. And the average value is $237,500 of houses sold. And we look here, we got 125, 150. Wow, I'd buy that house for 150,000. 175, I could see that. Let's see what this one is. I'm not so sure the numbers match up with the houses. So much as we're making a point here. That could go for 150. I'm not sure where. But we divide that by 4. And now we're, Florida. And we got 150,000, so average home values are going down. It appears. Well, it really, if we go back, I think, we had a $500,000 house that sold down here. Okay, so it may just simply mean there's less expensive homes were sold. So you can't just go by, and this is some of the data we get from our government at times.
Average doesn't always mean the value
No,
of the property.
it doesn't. Somebody, I think it was a conversation we had about one of the properties. It was like, well, the last time, we were looking at the price for one of the properties on the sheet, and Lupe was doing some research. He says, well, it sold, the last time it sold was for 67, and it's a good size home. And well, that was the bank foreclosing on it, and that was it only owed $67,000 on it. So there's so many misleading numbers out there. When Chrissy does comps, when she finds a number that's just completely nowhere near the other ones, in this environment, it's easy to guess it was a foreclosure because they're everywhere. So you can't be misled by numbers. A dropping average, okay, just means so. So this, by the way, so I always want to be conservative when I show you numbers. And of course, since we're recording, you have to understand there's no guarantees. I need to do my disclaimer where like the ones they have on the radio. They're so fast you can't tell what they're saying. But 5% a year. You buy a house that produces income, and your return's actually higher. I mean, the 5% is the appreciation. But if you're getting income too, isn't that part of your profit? Absolutely. If you borrow most of the purchase price, you start getting returns over 50%. And when you hold it for a few years, you get returns over 1,000% on properties. I mean, you get like compound rates of 30% a year. I mean, I'm going to show you some very conservative examples, and that's what happens. The thing is, nobody ever stays with real estate. They buy 1 or 2 properties, they get out, or they just hold those 2 properties. And then they never really go back and see how much they were actually making on, even though if they paid attention to how much they were making on those 2 properties, they would have been buying more as fast as they could. If the rental income just covered the monthly payments and the house appreciated at 5%, you get a 25% return on your money, just a 5% appreciation. And that's if you weren't getting any cash flow. So the rent was equal to the mortgage payments. And I usually, by the way, as a mindset thing, if the rent is $100 higher than the PITI, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, I look at that as break even. When it starts going above 100, then we start thinking, okay, well, it's positive cash flow. And so when we try to just break even on a property, we always try to get that extra 100 a month. Now, we always try to get as much as possible, but our first goal is always to make sure the rent is going to pay for the property. And then we try to get high as we can. Yeah.
Are you considering that to be break even just because there are maintenance costs involved?
Yeah, kinda. I mean, that's only $1,200 it's just cushion. You know, that equals an extra $1,200 a year, and usually that'll at least pay property management each month, you know, and not have to come out of the mortgage. So if we look at a $120,000 house, we bought the house for $120,000 and even put 20% down. So again, conservative. Okay, we didn't not buying it no money down or anything like that. $24,000, and it appreciates at 5%. That's $6,000, right? Okay, you put down 24%. I mean 24,000. You made $6,000. It's 25%. I mean, how many investments right now are you getting 25% on? And does this look like that was all that difficult? Okay, just this. This is the most conservative plan to wealth in real estate right here. We haven't even talked about income from rent that you'd be putting in your pocket, or maybe paying more off on the mortgage, and the fact that this is a $120,000 house we bought for $120,000 with 20% down. What if we bought this thing for $80,000? Okay, here we only used $10,000 down. What's our return now on our money? Oops. I just want to see my kids again. You know, now we only put $10,000 down. Look at our profit, okay, on your cash. Those returns are exciting. I mean, it's actually, and I've told this story before, but I haven't really got to the heart of it. And, you know, and trust me, I don't want to make light of any amount of money any of you may have lost in 401ks or any stocks or anything like this, but I didn't lose a dime. I take that back. I've got 3 Scottrade accounts where I test different portfolio strategies, one in each of my kids' names, and at the end of the year, whichever one's working, I put, you know, they all go that way, and then I start testing different strategies. I do it to amuse myself. I don't make much money, although one year we did make 60% by investing in natural gas that year. But, you know, over time, I probably lose money like every other stock picker. But this is why all my money was in cash. All my money was in cash the last 3 years, sitting in checking accounts, going out into real estate, coming back in. So all this crash didn't affect us at all, my wife and I. And that's why I said I know many people have been affected horribly, but the reason it was in cash was just no different than having a Ameritrade or a Scottrade account waiting to invest in stocks, which a lot of times your money's just in the money market, right? It's swept over to the money market and you're picking stocks. Well, I'm doing it with real estate because of the 60% returns. Now, a lot of people are trying to get the 60% returns in the stock market, but it ain't happened. It's just not going to. You don't have the time. Now, you could grow to that. I mean, I spent a lot of time the year I did a lot of what are called small cap stock investing that year, and did a lot of analysis, a lot of study, a lot of reading, paid for some very expensive seminars, and we did make six. But I realized that I hate this. It's boring, and you know, I'd allocate the where the money was going to be, and then I had really nothing else to do unless I read and studied the rest of the day. You know, in real estate, we can be doing a different aspect of real estate, you know, as much time every day or as little time as I want, depending on whether I do it or make Chrissy do it. You know, but the 60%, does this look like very hard? This is much more in line, because rarely do we put 20% down. Okay? A lot of times we buy so that we have 20% equity already. Okay? And a lot of times we get into these with no money down. You might put that $10,000, you might even put that $24,000 down, but you'll have it back 3 weeks later when you refinance. Okay? Make sense? You don't understand that, or you do? Okay.
I get that one, I don't get that one.
60%.
Which part? The 60%?
The 60% on it, if you put 10,000 down
And I made $6,000 in my 5% appreciation.
over the year.
Yeah. So, what's that? So,
Okay,
6,000 is 60% of this, right?
okay, all right, now I got it.
It's your percent interest you earn on your investment that you put into.
Correct.
That's per,
Percentage of your investment. Yeah.
that's your year.
Yes. That's just 1 year. That's just 1 year. That's why, when you get multiple years into this, you get over 1,000% on some of your investments. I mean, it's mind-boggling. Everybody see the Will Ferrell movie where they're the ice skaters? He says mind-boggling, and the other guy goes, "Did you just say mind-boggling instead of mind-boggling?" He goes, "Yeah, it's like when your thoughts are in a bottle and all bottled up." That movie's actually pretty funny. So let's continue on with our example. You learn to buy houses at below market prices and finance more of the purchase price, and your rate of return increases. Those two examples were if we paid full price for the $120,000 house. So, and we were already at a pretty conservative 60%. Okay, so that is mind-boggling. So how long does it take to double in value if it goes up? I already let the cat out of the bag on that one. The rule of 72 that some of you relearned for the first time today. You just divide your percentage, and that's how you compare, by the way, that's one of the ways you can compare investments. I'm going to get 3%, I'm going to get 4%. Divide it into 72 and you'll see how long it's going to take to double. And of course, there's always some other factors that can go in. For instance, in real estate, how good did you buy? And market rates. But over, we're talking about the only investment over 200 years that's come in at 5%. That's a fairly good amount of time to grab an average over, to make it consistent. Did you?
5% is not on the 120 pages. It's 5% on what the market value is.
On the market value, yes. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. And I mentioned that earlier. It's the 5%, yeah, it's not on, I might have paid 80,000, but the 5% appreciates on the value of the property. That's the beauty of it. That's what increases the rate of return. Thanks, Lupe. and that's where the power comes in with leverage.
Now in California, we're seeing the value coming down.
Mm-hmm.
What would your advice be in that situation?
Probably in Chicago.
Probably really- Yeah. That's what I thought he was going to say.
That's why you're here in Chicago. I'm not kidding. I would go elsewhere. It's another reason that I started doing these events, and some of you have been at a number of these events, and my whole plan was to get here to Chicago. But I didn't want to start here because people would say, well, you live in Chicago. So we did this in Memphis, then we did it in Houston, and now we've done it here. It doesn't matter where you live. And some of my students have bought in each city because we do use property management. The other thing I wanted to get the point across is, and I always say this, if I owned the house next door to me, I wouldn't manage it either. In fact, the person in that house wouldn't know I owned it. And I would use a property manager. And I would forget that I owned it. I'd just get a check every month. How many of you do own stock? Raise your hand. And how often do you drive over to the stock and check up on it? You don't know where it's at, right? It's no different. It's no different. It's an investment. You're better off, many of you are better off that your investments will be here because you'll get involved when you don't have the time and it'll mess up other things you're doing, And now you might grow into that where you buy them locally too, and I hope you do. Okay? But if you don't want to, we'll be here to provide for you. And then the power in buying with leverage comes in future years. We went up a year or two, it was 126, then it goes to 132, and the 5% keeps going up each year, and your debt goes down. And the beauty of it is your debt's going down and because somebody else is paying it down. It's called double dipping. Your debt goes, somebody else pays it off, you borrow money to buy the property, then you have someone else pay that debt down. This is scary wealth. This is Donald Trump type stuff. This is how, obviously they do it on a bigger scale. They do it on the billions of dollars scale. But what we're talking about here, very initially, right out of the gate, is on the tens of thousands of dollars and gets into the hundreds of thousands very rapidly. And it gets into the millions in just a matter of years. Just a few years. So in 14.4 years, it's worth $242,274, which is roughly what? Twice as much, 120 times 2. So it doubled in 14.4 years. Now it could have other factors, could have made it go higher or lower, but if it stayed at 5%, it doubles in 14.4 years.
No, I'm just thinking, I'm playing devil's advocate.
Mm-hmm.
California used to buy a house back in the 70s for a stucco 3-bedroom on a slab, $70,000. Now that house is going for $350, and it's only worth $180. When does the bubble hit and burst? Because you're saying something that was 120.
Well, this is no bubble, though.
Okay.
5% a year. See, the increase in value isn't so much on the property, the house. What's it on? It's on the land. There's not, 5% doesn't create a bubble. 10% a month or 5% a month, creates a bubble. Because that property is only worth 120. But it was bought at 70 and it, let's say 140, it did double over time. And it should have been 140. But then again, you can't compare anywhere else with California or the East Coast either, because there's unique situations with it being a coast. Okay?
I'm just saying, does there come a point, even in Chicago here, you take someone that's your average Joe, mom, dad, 1 or 2 kids, working at a factory someplace, the target area, because really that's the pulse of America.
Sure.
And then you turn around and, the house now is 120, renting it, all of a sudden the house is worth 400,000. No one like that could afford that.
But you got to understand, your appreciation is tied to the cost of living and everything else. They're all intertwined. So when you're appreciating at 5%, other things are going up too. It's when they start, it's when it walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it is a duck. So when it is going up at 10 and 12% a year, every year. Now it might go up 12% one year and you'll find, next year only goes up 3%.
That's the time to maybe sell it and look at it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and rebuying. Now, I always recommend that you only sell if you're at the peak of a market. And otherwise, you just don't sell, just hang on to it and withstand anything else. But if you really feel you're at a peak of a market, then, well, that's the peak of the market, and you're probably not going to get there in another decade. And then you could sell, okay? And you could take, you could just start over again. But, it's also hard to pick a peak, and this isn't the creation of a bubble, though. I absolutely see what you're saying, but this isn't the creation of a bubble. This is a slow, gradual increase of prices, just like we've done over the last 200 years. That $70,000, house 100 years ago was $7,000.
Are you saying if you looked at raw land, you would see a more level increase rather than if you were just looking at housing?
Oh, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's better.
It's just that they're tied together. I mean, the land is in California. It's got a house on it that people want to live in. And then there's emotions that are involved there too, and then there's speculation. And some of that speculation in the housing market was created just like the speculation on Wall Street was created. Okay, and that was a bubble, and that did burst.
I can see
Okay.
a lot of friends that live in Minnesota invested in Myrtle Beach because we go out to Myrtle Beach.
Sure.
Every year, oh, this will be a good deal, and they saw it going up, and then all of a sudden the bottom fell out of it. You've got all these second home properties that are valued high, but all of a sudden it's like
Yeah. Well, that's, and that's no different than any other investment. You've got to, if you're going to get into stuff like that, you got to know when to get out. In 2000, I don't know when it started, but it was during the internet boom. My sister and her husband were right smack dab in the middle of it. They worked for, he worked for a company that housed servers that had websites on them. And I still remember she emailed me one time, and of course probably violated 40 SEC rules by doing it, but told me I should buy their stock because it was going to split, and only the employees knew. And I remember it was $8. I didn't buy until it was 110, and I missed out on several $1 million if I would have known when to sell. I bought at 110; it split 6 more times. And my wife and I made like $25,000. So we were happy. At one point, we were up about 700 on paper. And, you know, we kicked ourselves a little bit, but I didn't know to sell when it was at 700. My sister and her husband were up $3.5 million. Now, to their credit, and I think to mine, I told them every month as much money as you're vested take out, because they couldn't sell all theirs as getting stock options. They could only sell so much. So I told them take as much as you can out, and they put money away for the kids' college and bought a new house and filled it with furniture and did all that. But then they lost all the rest of their money because the company went under. And why was I telling that story? We were talking. Oh, the bubble. Yeah, yeah, and so walks like a duck, quacks like a duck is what I was getting to, because you know that does look too good to be true, and it was, and almost everybody that you know their wealth went up, they lost it all, including us. Fortunately, we came out with a little bit, and the reason we came out with that because I started trying to sell at 180. Now remember, I bought at 110, it split to 55, went to about 100, split again, and split 4 more times. Now this stock, I started trying to sell at either 180 or 280, I can't remember which, but for those that know, it was stopping every, you know, it was, what is it, stop limit? I forget the phrase. But it was limiting down every day. So in other words, it was going down its full limit every day, and they couldn't fulfill my sell order. And I didn't get my sell order fulfilled for 3 weeks. And by then, we watched, you know, $675,000 go. And, you know, that was a bubble, okay? But when you see it going from 120 and it's 240,000, 14.4 years later, you almost look at that and go, you don't even notice that it's 240,000. But if it's worth 700,000, you know, because not only you guys in California, but I'm in the Midwest, and I could, you know, go out and have a cocktail with a friend, and we could talk about, wow, that's crazy in California. But you wouldn't say that the reverse, okay? I mean. So what I'm saying is it's clearly obvious about the bubble, where you wouldn't have, that's, so it's a valid point, but you see the difference? Yeah. So, I'm going to take a break here in a few minutes. Yeah, let's look at a couple more examples. So, double your money even faster than the 14.4 years. We buy for less than retail price. Some smart man just said this. Appreciation is based on retail price. It was me, because I just said it. That's what Lupe was saying. Their appreciation is based on the 120,000. Well, if I buy it at 80,000, I've made even more money. Buying an area with better than average appreciation, we make more money. And we just looked at getting 60% returns by buying with less money and using leverage, which the people in this, the majority of the people in this room can do. Okay. So there will be times when you'll get a call from Christy, and it may take some money, and you'll be able to make that choice, and you might have to pass on some because of what's going on, you know, back home, and Christy will go on to someone else, and then sometimes you'll be able to take advantage. Sometimes. You know, like I said, every deal is different. We make sure that we let you know, though. We don't just automatically say, well, you know, Lupe's not going to like this one because he's going to need $20,000. You know, we'll let you know. We'll get to the point sometimes where Chrissy will see your portfolio and know that you're going to want one in June, and so she'll have that tickler to know to have you a good one in June. But what you'll end up being is all on our, what's called my buyer's list, email list. I've got an A, B, and C list. You guys will all be the A list. The B list are people that have bought properties but haven't come here. My C list are people that have said they want to buy properties but haven't. So you'll get a sample of a document that we have here that we'll pass out this afternoon, and you'll just get emails or faxes, and it'll show the property, the price, and you know, somebody emails back and says, I'll take it, and then it's off the market. And then we'll say, well, make sure you download a contract, sign it, send it in, and if we get that in 24 hours or 48 hours, then you got a property. And that's how a lot of you will buy, and then some of you will buy that way, plus we'll have, you know, Chrissy will come to know your schedule, and you'll come to let her know your schedule. And, you know, you come into a, you know, IRA or a CD, or you leave a company in a 401, you got a 401 available, things like that, and all of a sudden, you want 3 more houses or something. So let's look at the example. Buy a $120,000 house for $80,000 like we talked about. 10%, so what are we doing here? We're doing on this one, more appreciation? $16,000 down, so 20% down, but yeah, 10% appreciation instead. And by the way, 10% appreciation, is that a lot for real estate? It's not. It really isn't. It is this moment today, okay? But there are places that are still appreciating in this country. Every place in the country isn't down. Okay? And so 10%, and many of you are going to see this for many years if you continue to invest in real estate, okay? If we buy today, will we see it in 2009? Probably not, okay? Will we see it in 2010? Possibly. Probably not. 2011? Even more possibly, okay? But you'll see that. So $120,000 house, now we go up $12,000. $12,000 on the $16,000 down payment, that's 75% on your money. Okay? Big numbers, big numbers. And how long does it take for an investment to double in value if it goes up 12% each year? 6 years. Okay? 6 years.
Still not as good a return as Hillary or Martha Stewart.
Well, that's true, but we don't have that inside knowledge. I'm sorry, did I say inside knowledge? So double your money, $120,000 house, now it's worth $140,000. So we picked up $120,000, right? So, well, no, because we put down, yeah, and appreciation. $160,000 on the $16,000 we put down. What's that return? It doesn't matter. It's big. That's big. That's wealth. All right. So that's what really happens here. And you know what? We've just been talking about one property. We haven't been talking about buying one a quarter. Actually just buying one a year. And those of you that, some of you could get it, well, Lupe, I know, I understand. We're not going one a year. We're going one a month for Lupe. And, but some of you should get excited for your children. And because you can get them involved. Whenever we have the big seminars and there's like a 21, some parents bring their 21-year-old kid. And I remember the last one in November, he thought he had a property lined up. It was a 4-day event. He was 21 years old. He thought he had a property lined up by the 3rd day. He was actually making phone calls and he was calling his friend who was a real estate agent, and they were, I doubt it went through, but because he was way too enthusiastic, and he's probably a bad deal, but it's just exciting to see, because I know I wasn't that way when I was 21, not with real estate anyway. So 100 houses, here, 100 houses is really not a bad goal for some of you. Because you got to, again, look at it as a stock portfolio. That's all it is. You're not managing them. Somebody else is. Building wealth. You just buy one or two, you rent one or two, and you look for the next deal. That's it. Just like if you were adding to your stock portfolio or any other type of investments. If you did collectibles, it's the same thing. Coins, same thing. All right, so let's take a break.